Good Thursday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock, time for Sports4CLE. Hope you're having a great afternoon. Thanks for joining us. A little later in the show, Lance Reisland from cleveland.com will join us, talk some X's and O's with the former coach and offensive coordinator as he looks at the Browns on tape. And we begin by talking Browns. Some interesting social media chatter back and forth. So Myles Garrett recruited Jadeveon Clowney successfully. Now it's OBJ that he's trying to bring back to the Browns. So you see, come back home, the fellas miss you. And you see OBJ responds, who are you talking to? And he says, it's time. With that, it's time to welcome in Quincy Carrier. Quincy, I'm guessing OBJ is a long shot, but Myles Garrett's been a pretty good recruiter so far.
Look, whenever Myles Garrett tries to make something happen, the only thing I'll ever be able to think of is remember that week after the Browns gave up a pretty disappointing defensive performance before that Bears game, Myles Garrett decided he was going to show up shirtless to the press conference and talk about he had a meeting with the defensive players on what they need to do in the next game. And what happened? Myles had 4.5 sacks that game. It was one of the best defensive performances in Cleveland Browns history after that game. So I say this, and look, I know it sounds like a joke, but I'm dead serious. When Myles Garrett said something, stuff changes, right? Like he has that effect on people. If Myles says you need to come over here, people listen. So that's the benefit. And this is why we say, look, no matter who's the quarterback, Myles Garrett is the franchise player on this team. Myles Garrett's the face of the franchise because he was drafted as a Cleveland Brown. He is a entrenched member of this Browns team, and he's the leader of this team. So when he says something needs to happen, dudes like Odell, look at Myles Garrett, look at his freakish athleticism, look at what he has accomplished already in his young career, and they respect that and they listen to that. And if that's what needs to happen, I know Odell's going to consider all the things that he needs to, and that's why I don't think this is very likely at the end of the day. But Myles Garrett saying, hey, bro, you need to come over here, that changes stuff.
Yeah, I'm with you. I am with you. All right, let's take a look. Best fits for the top 10 remaining free agents. And this is from ESPN.com. Will Fuller ranked number 10, best fit the Cleveland Browns. Now, I know you've addressed this on your podcast as well. Do you think the Browns are going to add any more receivers, or do you think it's a matter of, they're done?
I think they want to get some of these young guys as many opportunities as possible, and I understand why that's the case. It's the same philosophy they're going with on the defensive tackle, and the reason you do that is because at some point you can't keep putting in one-year contracts to put Band-Aids over what is a long-term problem, right? And in order to solve this long-term problem, you need long-term fixes. How do you do that? Young players that you can keep under contract for decent money. That's how you do that, and you can only do that if you give them the opportunity to shine. So, yeah, for right now in the offseason, would it make us feel a lot more secure about the team and a lot more safe about the team if they brought in Will Fuller, if they brought in Ndamukong Suh? We would. But is that really what this team needs long term? I think this team needs some young talent to step up to be strongholds at that position, so we don't have to rely on Amari Cooper becoming available, so we don't have to rely on Ndamukong Suh being available in July or something like that. These one-year duct tape fixes, right? We want to get to the point where we don't have to sign Jadeveon Clowney to another one-year deal, and that Alex Wright can take over for that position. And in order for that to happen, they need to get reps. So I think Andrew Berry feels good about the young wide receivers on this team. He feels good about Anthony Schwartz, and he feels good about Donovan Peoples-Jones, and I think they feel good about giving those guys a chance to shine in this offense with much better quarterback play, hopefully.
And along those lines, we're going to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, and this viewer tends to agree with you. Let's take a listen.
Hi, guys. Got a couple remarks regarding the wide receiver room. Number one, I'm not sure bringing in Will Fuller is a great idea. I agree with Andrew Berry. I'm going to trust his judgment. Maybe one of these young wide receivers is going to be better than. You never know. He can always bring him in later if he needs to. I'm going to trust Andrew Berry on this one. You really can't evaluate the wide receiver room yet. You have to give it an incomplete. Thank you for listening.
And as always, we appreciate all the voicemails. Quincy, I think what potentially could happen, they're going to wait and see into training camp, a couple of the preseason games. Hopefully somebody steps up. They're with them day in and day out. If everybody's kind of flat, then they may look to bolster that, with guys that get cut, from 53-man rosters or that, if the young guys aren't getting it done in the preseason.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to step up in order to get those spots. Like, I don't think they're just going to leave it up to chance, especially if Deshaun's only suspended for 4 games. Like, I don't think they're going to leave that up to chance. If Deshaun's suspended for more than that, maybe they do feel more comfortable about just letting them out there and letting them learn, because you have less on the line the more games Deshaun gets suspended. But from that perspective, I also think that, if it looks disastrous on the defensive line, if it looks disastrous at that wide receiver position in camp, they would be foolish not to consider bringing in another person to stabilize this while they try to get those things going along with the young players, or, while they try to wait to reload in next year's draft with some wide receivers. But one, I don't anticipate that being the case. I mean, I completely forgot to mention David Bell in this whole conversation, who I think is going to play a significant role in that young wide receiver stepping up conversation. And that, I think they have a good amount of faith that it's not gonna get to that point. And also, Deshaun Watson, he's a top tier quarterback. And this is kind of what you expect top tier quarterbacks to do, is elevate players. So, it's going to be up to Deshaun as well to make sure that these guys can elevate their play based on, him being a very good quarterback.
Yeah, and along those lines, Bleacher Report ranked every team's quarterback situation heading into the 2022 season. Number 1, Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. 2, Mahomes and the Chiefs. 3, Josh Allen and the Bills. 4, the Packers. 5, the Ravens. 6, the Bengals. The Browns are 11th. And the note that they make, in his 4 seasons in the NFL, Deshaun Watson has made the Pro Bowl 3 times. When we last saw him on the field, he threw for a league-leading 4,823 yards. That's almost 5,000 yards in a season, 33 touchdowns against 7 interceptions. And those numbers are without DeAndre Hopkins. That was the year DeAndre Hopkins was in Arizona. You tend to forget just how good of a quarterback this guy is when he's on the field.
No, he's scary good. And look, part of the reason we forget how good of a quarterback he is, he played at Houston. And Houston's is not one of those teams that are on national TV a lot. And Houston just hasn't been they didn't build a competitive enough roster around Deshaun Watson for it to matter how good he was. But now he's on a better roster. And look, with the quarterback rankings, and I think it's fair for the Browns to be at 11 just because we don't know what the status of Deshaun's going to be for the whole 17-game season, more so than any other quarterback situation room in the NFL. I know we could say other teams could have injuries, but we have it's more than 40% chance that he definitely gets suspended. So not knowing that's going to bring you down the rankings, but it's going to be interesting to see. Will Deshaun Watson be who some people are saying he's going to be this year, which is a guy who is an empty calories guy in Houston, and that being on a better team is not going to make him a better player? I've heard that narrative thrown around. Or is he going to be similar to what Matt Stafford did when he got onto a good team, where he kind of dispelled some of these narratives about himself because he won the Super Bowl. He did what they said he wasn't capable of doing. And I think Deshaun Watson's a good amount better than Matt Stafford, but that's a whole different conversation for a whole different day. But we've seen these things play out both ways, where we felt like a quarterback was in a bad situation. They go to a good situation. They still end up being the same quarterback. You think of Kirk Cousins, right, in Minnesota. Thought he was in a bad situation in Washington. Comes to Minnesota. Same old Kirk Cousins, right? He didn't get any better. And then we've seen it happen the other way. So, it's going to be interesting to see once Deshaun gets out there. From all accounts, from anybody who's seen this man just slightly throw a football, it seems like it's probably going to go a lot more on that Matt Stafford route than anything else. But we'll see. There's a lot of talk based on what he has done really early in his career. And let's not forget, it's really early in Deshaun Watson's career at this point. Like, if this works out, he's able to play a full NFL career after this whole scandal. Browns got at least 10 years with Deshaun Watson. Like, that is the majority of his career. If Deshaun Watson ends up being a Hall of Famer, it will be as a Cleveland Brown more than likely, unless he switches teams again. And that's just something that I think we lose perspective of, because he's a traded quarterback instead of a drafted quarterback. And I don't think we respect how young he is. Is he younger than Baker Mayfield? I think he's either the same age or younger than Baker Mayfield, which is crazy to think because Baker's still on his rookie deal.
Yeah, I think he's actually younger. And remember, he was a guy that kind of helped put Clemson on that national map for several years as well. So he's used to winning. Quincy, Carrier, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out on the other side of the break. We're going to talk a little bit about the David Njoku contract extension, Sports for CLE. Talking Browns with Quincy Carrier. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier. David Njoku signed a 4-year contract extension, average value per season better than $14 million a year. Wasn't that long ago that Njoku had asked to be traded, decided he wants to stay here. Here's his reaction to signing that deal that will keep him a Brown for a while.
It means the world, you know. I guess everything comes full circle, you know. Obviously, in the past, we've had our differences, and to be able to sign a 4-year deal, you know, here where it all started, just it means everything to me. So I'm very blessed to be here for the next 4 years.
Your best football's ahead of you, and you know it's been injuries, you know, production maybe that. Do you feel the same that your best football's ahead of you?
Absolutely. I feel like the only way to go is up from here. Just keep stacking good days of hard work, you know, and perseverance.
Quincy Carrier, I know you've addressed this. What are your thoughts on the Njoku contract extension?
This is one of the weirdest reactions to a normal contract extension I've ever seen in the world. Like, it was just like David Njoku got extended. And you look at the contract, like, okay, it's basically a franchise tag plus, right? And the money for the next year is really not even super guaranteed. It's only really $4 million of it guaranteed. And then everybody just went on this, like, hot take about, oh, it's a terrible contract. The Browns are like, it wasn't a long-term deal. And I think this is kind of due to just maybe NFL fans have not caught up to what front offices are doing. Most front offices don't really give out contracts that are more than really 2 years. Like, it might say 4 years or 6 years on that contract, but it's really a 2-year deal, right? Because it's either going to get restructured or there's no guaranteed money, which means they could cut you with no consequence. So that's a 2-year deal in my books, right? If you can get released and it don't cost the team nothing, that you have no contract at that point. If you have no guarantees, you don't have a contract. So these are really 2-year deals that they're giving up. Like John Johnson, somebody who signed a 4-year deal a couple of years ago. Don't be surprised when restructuring comes up this year, right? Or maybe a release comes up for him, right? Like, this is just how the NFL works. Everybody freaked out about the back end of that deal. That back end of that deal is about salary cap dressing, right? They got void years in there. They got everything else in there. That is not to be concerned about. And also, why were people concerned about his cap hit this year? I don't know, because it went down because he's not on the franchise tag, right? It was at $11 or $12 million straight up on the franchise tag because it's non-negotiable, non-restructurable once you sign that tender. Now it's down to $1 million because all of it's in the signing bonus. So David Njoku got what he wanted. He got his money now. He got some security for next year. And if he does get cut, he gets big termination pay from the league, right, from the NFLPA. So he's going to be fine on that front. He has that financial security. If you're the Cleveland Browns, you save some money on the cap. They have $40 million in cap space, and that is with Baker Mayfield's $18 million still counting against them. So when that comes off the books next year, Deshaun's going to be at $54 million. You'll still have $4 million in cap space after that, and you're going to restructure some things to make sure that you're going to stay under the cap. So they'll be fine on that front. I don't know. Just salary cap stressing is the most pointless thing I think an NFL fan can do, because like it's hard enough to understand football, right? And it's right in front of us, transparent for us to see with all 22 film and all this access that we have now. It's even harder to understand the stuff that we don't see at all, which is the front office salary cap negotiation stuff. There's a lot of people who will tell you they know what this is how the salary cap works. Most of those people are just making stuff up or going on Spot Track. Like, the Browns are fine from a cap perspective, even with Baker Mayfield's $18 million eaten up in there. David Njoku's deal, it's not a terrible deal. Honestly, you could be more concerned about Denzel Ward's deal. Not saying that I am, but that would be a more concerning deal. Joe Bitonio's deal at 34 might be a more concerning deal for some people. Even Wyatt Teller's deal, I would categorize as a more concerning deal than David Njoku. All this to say is that there is no concern about this contract coming back to bite the Cleveland Browns. I don't know. I think this is more or less people who cheer against the Browns, like I've seen other division fans, just reaching for something to talk about with the Browns. Oh, they're spending too much money. And, most of that stuff is Bengal fans is bad because we understand the concept of what it is to spend money in free agency, unlike the Bengals. That's all I'm going to say about that. You know what I mean? That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, only 28 of Njoku's 56 plus is guaranteed, so that's the other part. All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. One of these fans talking about the Njoku contract.
Hey, Dave. This is Ronnie from West Virginia. My question is about Andrew Berry. Why would he sign Njoku to such a lucrative contract? The last time Njoku caught more than 36 passes that he had this past year was in 2018. He's averaged 350 yards receiving over the course of 5 seasons. Granted, one of those he was hurt most of it. I thought the Browns made a mistake when they franchised him. They doubled down on that mistake with this huge contract. Now, I realize it's a gamble to let him hit free agency, but Njoku said himself that at the end of last year he wanted to finish his career in Cleveland. Why not just allow him to go to free agency and see what his worth is and sign him then? I think they probably overpaid about $15 million for him. That's just my opinion. Love your work. Thank you.
As always, appreciate all the calls. Quincy, the thing I would say about Njoku is wait till you see Deshaun Watson. That's a guy who effectively uses tight ends. We've used the stat the last couple of shows, and we decided not to use it again. He's thrown 21 touchdown passes of his 104 career touchdown passes have come to tight ends. And they're not really marquee tight ends. David Njoku has the ability to have some big years with Deshaun Watson as a quarterback.
There's that. And also, I know if you look at accounting stats, right, you can make the argument that David Njoku has been underwhelming. If you look at his PER stats, right, his advanced numbers, he hasn't, right? If you look at some of his tape, right, he hasn't. And also, his receiving numbers aren't necessarily going to be the most important thing he does as a tight end. He also blocks. That's majorly what he's going to do as a tight end is block, especially now with Deshaun Watson. So that also matters too. And his blocking performance has definitively gone sky high. Like, he was one of the worst blocking tight ends in football. Now he's one of the better ones for the last couple of years here, right? He's not dropped the ball for the last couple of years. And you can make the argument that a lot of the reason he didn't have that production is because they had to get the ball to Austin Hooper, who was paid more money than him, right? And was the number one tight end and was the favorite target of Baker Mayfield. So when you add up all those factors, they have seen him in practice. They probably feel like really confident that, hey, once we get this guy more opportunities, he's going to produce more. And also, the way the contract is structured is that, hey, look, if David Njoku has a breakout year, you get him for $16 million next year. That's probably what he was going to go for in the free market, or a little bit less, right? Because I think that tight end number is about to explode. I know Mark Andrews is under a 4-year deal, but again, NFL deals are really 2-year deals. He's going to come up for a restructure soon here. So he's going to go up. with his number. A lot of these tight ends are going to go up. Travis Kelce, I think he hits the market in a year or so. So that number is going to explode pretty soon here because a lot of these tight ends that have been having 1,500-yard seasons are about to come up soon. So that's about to come up here. And look, if David Njoku is flat terrible this year with the extended opportunity they have, they can get out of that contract if they really want to. If he is great, then they'll just stay in it, right? Like, this is a win-win for both sides. Whether David works out or not, I don't think there's a gigantic risk here because this contract has multiple outs. Like, at worst, you'll fill this contract for 2 years. But that's really it, you know, outside of like the $5 million in void years that they have tacked on at the back of this thing, which kind of goes into the guarantees in this contract. So again, with David, it's not necessarily about my confidence that it's going to work out or not. I do think it's going to work out, but that's not where my non-issue with this contract is. My non-issue with this contract is that it's structured pretty safe in the case that happens, that they're not going to be stuck holding the bag paying David Njoku $15 million for 300 yards of production, right? Like, that's not how that contract is structured at all. And I think Browns and David Njoku's management were very smart to structure it in that way, because David also wants the freedom, if he does become a 1,500-yard guy in a couple of years, to get that 1,500-yard money, right? Like, he's also in a position to, in a couple of years, if he wants a new deal, he can get that.
Yeah, and the other thing we're going to take a look at here, and these are kind of interesting. This is from Doug Poundili. Deshaun Watson's stats that might surprise you. Let me run through a couple of these. So Watson has thrown 27 touchdowns of 30 yards or more. He has 10, count them, 10 game-winning drives in his career. And his record in October and November, when you're kind of positioning yourself for the playoffs, 18-8. When you look at those, Quincy, which of those kind of impress you the most? Those are all numbers of a quarterback who is a winning quarterback.
The game-winning drives are really impressive because I remember he had a couple of them game-winning drives that got blown by their defense being absolutely awful for a couple of years. So, like, that fact that it's at 10 is crazy because I think I've seen at least 3 or 4 of them where, I mean, there was a game against where he had the touchdown to, was it Will Fuller? Not Will Fuller. It was the guy, Kenny Stills. He threw a game-winning touchdown essentially to Kenny Stills with 37 seconds left. And the Texans blew the defense blew that game-winning opportunity to the Saints, right? Like, this is what he's been able to accomplish. When you watch him, he has come through in the clutch consistently. I mean, if you ever watched him at Clemson, he came through in the clutch. This is why I wanted the Browns to take him back in 2017. I would have said at the time, I would have argued over Miles because I thought he was that guy coming out of college because I done seen him just tear up Ohio State year in, year out, like we stole something from him. But this is who he is. This is who he's always been. In those situations, he's always stepped up. He's always been a big-time gamer. I mean, his biggest college highlight is a game-winning touchdown in a national championship game. His biggest professional highlights are when he lost sight in his eye and still threw a game-winning touchdown against Oakland. And I'm not sure if the defense blew that one. I think the defense ended up blowing that one in overtime, so it didn't count as a game-winning drive. This is like, when you consider the things that went against him in Houston, the fact that he's at 10 game-winning drives is amazing because he's had a lot of drives where he should have had game-winning drives, and the defense just completely did nothing for him. That's where I think he's going to have the most benefit in Cleveland, is that the defense is going to be able to support him a lot better than it did those last couple of years in Houston, where he was playing well, he just didn't have any help.
Quincy, Carrier and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll flip sides of the ball, talk a little bit of defense. We'll hear from Miles, Garrett, and Joe Woods. Sports for CLE will continue. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier. Let's take a listen. Myles Garrett talked about what he has seen just in a couple of days of working alongside Perrion Winfrey, the Browns' rookie defensive tackle.
He works hard. We just got to get him in the right place at the right time. You know, he's a hard worker. He wants to learn, but you know, the Perrion I saw on the phone and the Perrion I got here, you know, he doesn't talk as much as I thought he would. But he's all work. You know, he gets there, he goes, you know, full speed, and you know, he's, you know, trying to get rid of some of the things he lost in college and take some of the things that he needs for the NFL, and just trying to refine it. And I think Kip is doing a good job, and we're just trying to, you know, show him what will work and what won't work.
And Quincy, I'd say that's a wise young man that is not talking a lot around the veterans early, trying to show him what he can do.
Yeah, you know, this kind of off topic, but when I remember how Myles used to talk on the press conferences his first year and how comfortable he is now. Like, it's like watching LeBron at the podium now. He's just sitting back, drinking his little water. Like, it's nice to see Myles really mature into his role as the leader of this team. And he's almost the leader of this city in a way. But yeah, next with Perrion Winfrey, I think Perrion's taking the right approach, man. That's Myles Garrett next to me. Ain't nothing I'm be able to tell Myles Garrett, right, about football, because it's Myles Garrett. This is one of the best defensive players in the NFL, one of the most freakish athletes. Like, you come into the NFL wanting to be Myles Garrett, and now you're sitting next to Myles Garrett, and it's not old Myles Garrett. This is like, I don't even know if Myles is in his prime yet. I don't even want to imagine what prime Myles Garrett can look like. And I'm pretty sure there are a lot of offensive tackles that don't want to imagine that. But you have Myles Garrett on one side, and then you have somebody with a bit more experience still in their athletic prime in Jadeveon Clowney to listen to, who both win in different ways despite being freakishly athletic for their size. So there is just such a wealth of information there with just those two guys. Former number 1 overall picks, former top college players, right? You know, these dudes have been very famous for playing football for a very long time. There's a lot that they could teach you. And it's good to hear that Perrion is soaking it in like a sponge, because that's how you get to that level, because Perrion Winfrey is a freakish athlete at that defensive tackle position. I mean, he ran a sub 540. He had a 1.68 split in his 40. So, like, he's up there athletically with those guys. So anything he can take from Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney will make him a better player. And it's nice to see that he has put his well, I don't know if he had an ego coming into it, but it's nice to see young athletes, young players in general, being able to put their ego aside, not feel like they have to prove stuff immediately to a guy like Myles Garrett, and more or less is willing to just listen and learn so they can get to that level eventually. And that's a good sign from Perrion. I mean, everything Perrion's done since he's walked into the building has sound like really good signs. We'll see what happens when he gets onto the field. I'm excited to see it, but it seems like he's hit a switch since the Senior Bowl, to be honest, and he's starting to really get to where he needs to be the player that he needs to be. And let's not forget, Perrion was not like an undiscovered gem. He was the number 1 junior college player when he came out, right? Like, he was coveted. Alabama wanted him. All of these teams wanted him. He went to Oklahoma, where he ended up being in a situation that wasn't favorable for him, for his skill set, in my opinion, and he's even voiced that. But now that he's in a position where he can play 3 tech like he's supposed to, and now he's next to Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney, the ceiling is the roof for the kid.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. It'll be interesting to see. You mentioned Jadeveon Clowney and Myles Garrett. Joe Woods talked about how they make each other better.
I think when you look across and you see another guy that was the first overall pick, I think that's like unsaid competition. I think for those guys, it helps them compete. Who's going to get the most sacks? Who's going to make the most TFLs? So I think it's just kind of an unsaid thing that happens between those two guys in terms of the competition. And again, as I said earlier, it helps me defensively because of, the offense can't key on one guy in there.
Yeah, it helps them defensively because you got two guys that nobody can block one-on-one.
Yeah, that also factors into it. I like Joe Woods with the whole they compete against each other. Because what it made me think about, you ever been to the gym and you see the big guy at your gym and he crosses paths with the big guy from another gym, and then they just look at each other for a while. That's what Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney. They're both the big dude at the gym, and they just okay, well, let's see who can do more weight. And that's how somebody hits a PR that day. That is what is going on with that, right? They make each other better because of that, but I think they make each other better because their skill sets are so complementary. We think of Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney as, they're both these freakish athletes. They win the same way. They win in two completely different ways. Myles Garrett is bendy. Myles Garrett can bull rush, and Myles Garrett will reverse swim you to get to your inside shoulder. Jadeveon Clowney, as athletic as he is, he wins with his hands and he wins on the inside. This is why he doesn't have the great sack totals that people look for, because when you win on the inside, you tend to get to the quarterback less and you tend to flush them more because it's just a harder angle to get at. And that's why Myles does have these tremendous sack numbers. But nonetheless, they're still both very effective. And when you have a guy who can win inside and a guy with Myles Garrett, who's elite at winning outside, you could put those two next to each other because they're not going to open up a gigantic gap when they try to rush in their best way. They're going to be complementary of each other and be able to still have gap integrity. So that's why they're such a great pairing. Their play styles match up. Their athleticism is through the roof. I mean, Jadeveon Clowney, he don't run that 4.5 no more that he ran coming out of college, but he still runs like a 4.6, 4.7 at that weight. So he's not slow. If you get flushed by one, you're going to get caught by the other. And now you throw in somebody who's relatively athletic in that way in Perrion Winfrey. You got Alex right back there, who's at least really long. And you have a very athletic defensive line that really complements each other, man. Defensive line, I think Marcus Spears says this all the time, and I think it's true. Defensive line is like playing basketball. It doesn't matter if you have the 5 best defensive linemen of all time next to each other. You need to make sure they all fit, because if they don't all fit and work together, they're going to cause problems for the linebackers and safeties and everything else, because they could push holes wide open that defensive line. And that's what Myles and Clowney have that a lot of other tandems don't, is that they just fit well. And I think we don't talk about defensive line fits enough in football conversations, but this is definitely a very important factor in this.
All right, before we take a quick break, Joe Woods also talked about Clowney coming back, Garrett, and all the veterans kind of helping some of the younger guys on that defense.
Absolutely. In terms of bringing back a veteran guy, they see the young guys see a veteran guy out there that they know, that they watch on TV and they see them play at a high level. For them, it's an opportunity to learn, the tricks of the trade. What does Myles do? What does Jadeveon do? And I know those guys are big-eyed, but it definitely helps in the development of the young guys. And to me, it helps buy them time. They don't have to go out there and feel like they have to play 40, 50 plays. We can slowly get those guys or integrate those guys throughout the season and give them as much as we feel like they can handle.
And Quincy, that's going to be important this year with the young tackles and some of the young ends that the Browns are trying to develop here.
Yeah, it's really going to be interesting to see in camp how that young interior does against Nick Harris and 2 guards who have been Pro Bowl level, right? So it's going to be a rough camp for those guys, I think, at the beginning. But, at the end, hopefully a couple of players step up. And I was thinking about this, right? When we go back to June of last year, we were just as concerned about the defensive line as we were this year. And as it turned out, Malik McDowell really stepped up in a way that wasn't anticipated. Now Perrion Winfrey is kind of the guy we're looking at to step up in there. And if he does, I think everything will be all right. Also, I think Taven Bryan has been lost in this whole conversation. I think he deserves a little bit more respect in this conversation than what people have been giving him, because I think he's an intriguing player that will be able to step up in that also, kind of like that loss early draft pick. He was a first-round pick, I think, with the Jacksonville Jaguars, has not panned out as of yet. But maybe in this situation where he's not going to be looked at as a first-round pick and more so looked at as a complimentary guy for a Miles and Jadeveon, maybe he thrives in that. Like, I think they feel good about their defensive line. I know Jordan Elliott has not lived up to expectations. I know Tommy Togiai has been up and down. But Taven Bryan, Perrion Winfrey, I think there's something in that. And also Sheldon Day has been a pretty solid player for this team for last year.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we look at the Browns roster and some of the things that they may be able to do this season. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. Chris Sims and Mike Florio from NBC Sports Pro Football talk about what to expect from the Browns in 2022.
How can you even begin to assess the Browns in any respect until you know whether or not they're going to have Deshaun Watson or Jacoby Brissett or Baker Mayfield or somebody else at quarterback? But look, they have a talented team, and last year it was the Mayfield injury that threw everything off. We really didn't get a chance to see how good the Browns could be last year because their starting quarterback was injured all season.
No, I know. You're right. And again, it's a team that I think we were disappointed in. Yeah, they had the quarterback injury for sure. But, man, I mean, to piggyback off of what Jadeveon Clowney's saying there, I mean, damn, yeah, the Rams are one of those teams. The Browns are one of those teams when you look at them on paper, kind of like the Rams, you go, damn, there's a lot of good football players on this team. Like, damn, holy cow, everywhere. Denzel Ward and Newsome at corner, John Johnson at safety, and Grant Delpit. Owusu Koromoa and Anthony Walker at linebacker. Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney and Chase Vinovich. I mean, the defense it's stacked. They got players everywhere. Offense, we know it's one of the best offensive lines of football. Now you add in Amari Cooper, the two-headed monster running back, and David Njoku. I mean, I understand him wanting to go back there for sure. But yeah, the quarterback thing's a real thing. They are a team, though, that I look at to go, damn, they're talented enough on paper that even with Jacoby Brissett, they should still be a pain in the butt no matter who they play against. There should not be a team in football that really overpowers or outmatches the Cleveland Browns in any certain area.
And Quincy, the thing that I would say that when I'm listening to Chris Sims talk, when you're comparing Jacoby Brissett, you're not comparing him to what Baker Mayfield was in 2020. Compare him to the quarterback play you got last year with a very similar roster. And the quarterback play last year just wasn't good. Jacoby Brissett's going to be better than that. He's going to be significantly better than that.
And the term I would use is more consistent than that, right? Like, we know what you're going to get out of Jacoby Brissett. They know what they want and will and won't do with Jacoby Brissett. Again, the Browns were, 2-1 without Baker Mayfield this year, almost went 3-0 without him. And it wasn't because anybody that stepped, was it Blaine Gabbert or somebody like that? I forget who they had playing that Oakland game because they were down to their fourth string. Yeah.
Nick Mullins.
Nick Mullins, yes. it was Nick Mullins and Case Keenum. These aren't like names that are setting the world on fire, but the Browns were able to win games with them, albeit the Cincinnati one kind of is on asterisk because they didn't play their starters. But they were able to win games with them just because they knew that they could not expect much out the quarterback position. Now, are you going to win 12 games like that? Probably not. But can you win 9 to 10 games and maybe make the playoffs as a wild card like that, even if you don't have your franchise quarterback playing this year? Yes, you can. Just because if you know what to expect with the quarterback position, you can better plan for it. This is why Jimmy Garoppolo, despite being a much worse quarterback than Baker Mayfield, in my opinion, and I think it's kind of objective if you look at some of the numbers, but being a much worse quarterback than Baker Mayfield, he's also been more consistent than Baker Mayfield. And that's easier to plan around if you're Kyle Shanahan, because now you know, okay, I can't have Jimmy throw the ball more than this amount of time or else I'm going to get bit in the butt. So we're just going to run this ball. Like, we've seen Kyle Shanahan decide he's not going to throw the ball at all in the second half and just run the ball and win games like that, right? Because you know what to expect. The issue with Baker Mayfield wasn't necessarily about play level. It was about consistency. And that is what Jacoby Brissett would bring that Baker Mayfield just was not able to bring over his 4 years in Cleveland. Is he's going to be consistently Jacoby Brissett. It's not going to be the most amazing thing in the world, but it will be the same thing. And that is ultimately healthier for the offense than somebody who could drop. I'm going to use a basketball analogy, right? Baker Mayfield's kind of like Deion Waiters, right? Remember when Deion could just drop like 40 one night? And you're like, all right, Deion, we going to trust you. Kyrie's out. It's on you today. And he dropped like 5, right? He go like 5 for like 45 from the field. And you're wondering what happened, right? That's hard to deal with. Yeah. But the dude like Jamario Moon, who's not better than Deion, but might give you 10 points on like 15 shots or whatever it is, that's fine because you know what you're going to get out of Jamario Moon. I don't know why I use him as the example, but that's just the example I fell to. But that's better than what you can get out of him because that inconsistency can really mess things up because you need to be able to rely on your quarterback to be consistent, whether that's going to be on one end of the spectrum or on the mediocre end of the spectrum. You can't have consistently awful, right? Like that can't happen. But mediocre to good, you can live with consistency there.
All right, before I let you go, I know you've addressed this on your podcast. Do you think the Browns upgraded their overall roster from last year to this year?
I think yes. I think they did. I mean, obviously, Deshaun Watson's addition alone upgrades the roster because of how important the quarterback position is. But even if you don't factor that, you look at special teams. I think they made a full, comprehensive upgrade of that position, especially at the return position. If you look at the defense, I think you brought back Clowney. I think Perrion ends up being a pretty good player for this team. I think MJ is going to be all right for this team. And then Greg Newsome and JOK in their second year will ultimately be an upgrade for this defense because they will be allowed to float more and allowed to have more responsibility. Also, John Johnson in his second year in the system, I think that would be an upgrade for this team as well. And then you look at offensively, and a lot of people had an issue with this. Amari Cooper is an upgrade over Odell Beckham just because Amari Cooper is more available than Odell Beckham. If Odell Beckham is at his peak, yes, Odell Beckham at his peak is better than Amari Cooper at his peak. But Amari Cooper's always going to be there, right? He don't miss that many games. Odell misses a lot of games, and he's had a lot of injuries over the last couple of years. I mean, he's on his, third season-ending injury in 5 years? So that is an upgrade there with him. We'll see what happens with the other wide receivers, but I think offensive line is a push, and then the quarterback is obviously an upgrade there. And I think having David Njoku get more targets instead of Austin Hooper being there is an upgrade, right? I think you add by subtraction in that sense. So I think they have a ton of upgrades on this team, and I think they're a much better team than they were last year, and I think they're a much better structured team than they were last year.
Quincy Carrier, as always, man, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it. Thank you, Quincy.
No problem. Y'all have a great day.
You too. Quincy Carrier, make sure you see his show on YouTube as well. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout, other side of the break. Lance Riseland from cleveland.com will join us. We'll talk some X's and O's, Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. So one of the things the Browns trying to do is get that passing game to click. Here's Alex Van Pelt on the focus of this offseason.
We needed to work on our passing game, our drop back pass game, whether that's 2 tight ends and 2 wides or 3 wide receivers. It was definitely an area of emphasis for us going in. We're treating this camp like a passing camp, more or less. I think at the end of this, we'll have 350 passes. Versus live competition in 7-on-7 periods. So we definitely focused in on our drop back pass game as a point of emphasis this offseason.
Let's welcome in Lance Riseland, former coach at Garfield Heights, also offensive coordinator. Lance, appreciate you joining us. When you hear Alex Van Pelt talk about needing to work on the drop back passing game, is that something that you kind of saw was lacking a season ago for the Browns?
Well, guys, first of all, thanks for having me. I think that it's lacked a lot of continuity. The run game and the pass game didn't marry very well. And Stefanski's game, his boot waggle counter game, if that's not going well, the pass game doesn't going well. Obviously, there were some injuries on the offensive line. Quarterback was hurt, but the pass game was definitely something we needed to work on. They weren't empty a little bit more than people think. They just had a lot of circumstance that made it not click. Bad down and distance, picking up certain blitzes, etc. I think I think they'll be better this fall.
And again, you mentioned the injuries. That factors into why they were doing that. Let's assume that Deshaun Watson is able to play, a decent stretch for the Browns. How do you think the offense looks different than it did a season ago? In other words, what kind of things can you do with Deshaun Watson that creates problems for defenses?
Well, the big question is how are you going to marry, Coach Stefanski's boot counter, naked kind of schemes with, Deshaun's ability. And to be honest with you, it's not that much. I think it's not as much as people think. Deshaun Watson is an elite quarterback. Watching him on film, I watched every game from 220. Can make all the throws. I think one of the things that's really impressive about him is his ability to be a dual threat guy. So, those boot and waggles, those things are great for him because he can add his feet. And so you're adding another option to those things. Obviously, I think they'll do some more setup off the play action. I still think, they'll be underneath center a little bit more than people think, even though he's very good in the shotgun. Having Nick Chubb and Hunt and that offensive line makes a quarterback's job a little bit easier, obviously. I think it'll be different, but I think it'll be, he's pretty good at everything. So I think he'll adjust and they'll kind of marry their systems together.
When you look at, you mentioned you kind of watched him on tape. What jumps out about him? What makes him an elite quarterback?
Well, there's a couple things. And, the first thing I really like is he's a very good decision maker, and he's got really good arm talent. I like the fact that he's a dual threat guy. But part of being a dual threat guy, besides the red zone runs and the third down runs, I think his best ability on film is his ability to improvise and keep plays alive. And he gets a lot of big plays downfield when he is, he makes that first guy miss, scrambles out of the pocket, receivers break routes, kind of almost backyard kind of football. I think he's really, really good at that. And he does it all the time. And he's tough to get on the ground. And then obviously he picks up, being a dual threat guy, picks up first downs with his feet, those crucial third down and mediums, which are so big in the NFL. But for me, that's besides being a dual threat guy and being elite in terms of decision making and arm talent, his ability to improvise is really special.
As a former coach, what is a guy that has the ball in his hands all the time that does that? What's that enable you to do as a coach and an offensive coordinator?
Well, you have a lot of trust and a lot of faith, no matter what what the down and distance is. You have a lot of faith in that guy. I go back to the playoffs last year. Those guys who are the elite guys, not the guys that you can win with, but can win because of. Those guys are hard to find. And when you find a guy that is really good, both with his feet and his arm, they're hard to defend, and they're special talents.
A lot was made last year. Teams would go man coverage and kind of dare the Browns to beat them. Is a guy like Deshaun Watson? I mean, when a dual threat guy sees man coverage, you run him off and then you say, okay, I'm going to beat the one guy that's supposed to get me. Is that something that you kind of see as well?
Yeah, well, it's the Browns offense makes it really tough in terms of man coverage because first of all, they can run the ball. So being in man coverage, like you said, makes it tough in terms of having run support in the secondary. But yeah, he's repeat that question, Dave, real quick. What did you want to know?
A lot of things. If you're in man coverage with a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, the legs are what kind of will beat you.
Yes, yeah. So finishing my thought there. Yeah. So when his feet, not only in man coverage does he hurt you with his feet in terms of making big plays, having Amari Cooper making big plays, but that third medium, the ability to use his feet to get out of the pocket, make plays. And then again, that scrambling ability, the receivers are in scramble drill. Everybody kind of reacts to him scrambling. It's twofold. One is how do you cover it and how do you cover his feet? And also the Browns have a run game. So it's if they can get it clicking, it's going to be very, very difficult to stop.
Before we take a quick break, what have you seen from David Bell? I know you've kind of looked at him on tape as well, the wide receiver that the Browns have drafted. What are they getting in David Bell, and what do you like about him?
Well, what I like about David Bell, he's a football player. So, we watch the combine, we watch all the pro days, and some guys, they run fast and they jump and he does that well. But maybe not at the elite level people want at receiver. But we watch him on film. He plays in the Big Ten. He's very good at releases. He's got great body control. He's very good ball skills. He's football fast, I like to say. So he plays in the Big Ten, like I said, and he runs away from everybody in the Big Ten. He had 232 catches for 3,000 yards in college. 21 TDs. He can work in the slot. He's big enough to work in the slot. He can work outside. He's got, like I said, he's very good against press. His releases against press. For me, he's just a football player. So maybe he doesn't have the measurables on the test scores, but when you watch him on film, he's really good.
Lance Riseland and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll flip sides of the ball, talk a little bit of defense. We'll get Lance's thoughts on Martin Emerson and Isaiah Thomas, couple of the Browns draft picks. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery, partners in education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Lance Riseland from cleveland.com. Let's take a listen. Joe Woods talking about the guy the Browns took with their first pick in the third round, Martin Emerson, cornerback.
He is a big guy. When we got here for the rookie minicamp, I was just looking over and I was looking at linebackers and safeties and looking at him. It was like, man, this guy's big. But he's another guy. He's about 6'2", 33-inch arms. And the type of technique that we ask our guys to play, he's tailor-made for that. Just in terms of the press techniques, being able to match up against bigger receivers. Again, he's learning the techniques that we use, learning our system. So there's going to be a little growth period for him, but we're very excited to have him.
And Lance, when you look at, I know you've watched all of the draft picks. When you look at Martin Emerson, what do you see? What kind of cornerback do you think the Browns got in Emerson?
Well, Coach Wood just said it best. He's long. He's very, very long. He's 6'2". His arms are 33 plus. He's got a 6'7" wingspan. So he's very, very, very long. And what he lacks in raw straight line speed, that length kind of helps make up for if he's beat. And he's very good with his hands. He is very physical against the run. I think he's a great fit. And like I said, on film, the thing I like on film is that he's playing in the SEC. And when you play in those big conferences, especially at corner, you're seeing elite guys each and every week. So obviously held his own against in the SEC. But his length, his overall length is a great fit for the Browns scheme.
Yeah, I know you wrote about Isaiah Thomas for the Plain Dealer and Cleveland.com, a film review. Take us through what you found out, what that article delineates about the guy the Browns took in that 7th round as a developmental guy.
I think the Browns are at the point where their roster is pretty good now. So they can get these guys who are physical talents and have, high upside, high ceiling. And that's what I see, out of Thomas, Wright, Winfrey, these guys who have great length, great size, great speed, lateral movement, the ability to do things inside on the edge, and their body types with development, it could be pretty good. And that's what the Browns get. They don't have to be super productive right away. They can learn and develop and get better throughout camp without the pressure of having to produce right away.
Is there something to guys like that, seeing how Clowney and Myles Garrett, is there something real to that, picking up tips from guys that are established superstar types?
Oh, absolutely. Those guys are good for a reason. And in terms of body types, that's the kind of body types the Browns are drafting, these, especially on the edge, these long-armed, tall guys with great wingspan, great arm length, the ability to get their hands on the offensive lineman. And obviously, looking at Thomas and Wright, they lack, extensive pass rush technique right now because in college they won with this pure size and athletic ability. Obviously, in the NFL, you can't do that. And you got two great guys to learn from. And so I think, there's some definite truth to that. Those guys will definitely help those guys come along. And the fact that, like I said, I think the key is they don't have to produce right away. They don't have to be great right away. They get to learn and develop without the pressure of having to be the production guy.
All right, before I let you go, got to ask you this one. You were an offensive-minded coach. When you see a guy like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, what kind of problems does he present for an offense? And what are teams telling their offensive guys about him?
Well, when I started watching film on the Browns and doing some work for cleveland.com, the thing that he's one of my favorite guys to watch on film. He flies around. That term you'll hear coaches say all around. He flies around. He's always around the football. He's versatile. He's flexible. He can play multiple positions. He can play in the box. He can play in the slot. He can cover tailbacks, receivers, running backs. He's physical. He holds up well against, the power run game. For example, as an outside linebacker, he can play the slot. If teams go spread and you don't have to go nickel. And without going nickel, you don't have that DB body in there. You have a linebacker body who can still hold up against the run. So he gives that flexibility of being able to cover a spread formation. But if the team wants to, do multiple tight ends, he can hold up in there too. So his versatility, his flexibility, his 1-2 to get to the ball is pretty impressive.
Lance Riseland, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Great stuff. You are welcome back whenever you are of the desire to be. Appreciate it, Lance. Thanks for the time.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Lance Riseland, coach of cleveland.com. Make sure you read his film breakdown stuff. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. See you back here tomorrow. Scheduled guest G. Bush from the Barbershop, as well as the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, and Brad Ward from BrownsWire.com. That's tomorrow, 4 o'clock, Sports for CLE. We'll see you then. Have a great night, everybody.